Welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week on the program, U.S. President Donald Trump deploys a small team of troops to Nigeria after both countries agreed that more needed to be done to combat the terrorist threat in West Africa. A team is believed to be heavily involved in intelligence gathering and enabling Nigerian forces to strike terrorist-affiliated groups. The Nigerian government has come under intense pressure by Washington to act after President Trump accused the leadership of failing to protect Christians from terrorists operating in the Northwest. Head of U.S. Africa Command, General Davgin Anderson, said the agreement between Nigeria and the U.S. to strengthen counterterrorism efforts in West Africa has led to increased collaboration between the nations, including a small U.S. team bringing unique capabilities from the United States. He did not specify the size or the scope of the mission. Nigeria's Defense Minister, General Christopher Musa, has confirmed the presence of the U.S. team in the country, but provided no further details. This is all part of efforts at curbing insecurity after the U.S. president warned in October last year that Christianity faces an existential threat in Nigeria, resulting in airstrikes against terrorists in northwest Nigeria in the early hours of December 26, 2025. And those strikes focused on targets in Sokoto State, conducted by a U.S. Navy warship in the Gulf of Guinea. According to Nigeria's Minister of Information and National Orientation, Alhaji Muhammad Idris, the operation targeted two prominent terrorist sites in the Boni Forest in Tangaza. He also said the 16 munitions were fired by MQ-9 Reaper drones at fighters attempting to infiltrate Nigeria from the Sahel. Alhaji Idris said debris from munitions mistakenly hit Jabo and Offa and caused no civilian casualties. The chairman of Tangaza, Issa Bashir, said strikes hit Lakurawa camps, killing many fighters and forcing others to flee. Back to the present, there's still some speculation surrounding the mission of the U.S. troops. We've heard the official reason. My colleague Maria Bird spoke with global security strategist Dr. Sylvester Okere in Washington, why he thinks the troops are in Nigeria and what he thinks the Trump administration hopes to achieve with their presence here.
Dr. Sylvester Okere, we thank you so much for joining us. As we know, it's very interesting times between the U.S. and Nigeria relations, specifically as we've learned that U.S. troops are now on the ground in Nigeria. Tell us, how does this happen? How are we here? We know there were discussions around the U.S. looking at security measures around Nigeria, but we did not expect necessarily this quickly that we would see U.S. troops on the ground. Tell us, where are we now?
This is not a new thing, though, because from my understanding, this was a kind of arrangement between the president and the U.S. Military. This meeting was done in Rome. One of the challenges we do have, personally, I can tell, is because we lack the management of our story. We don't know how to tell our story. Because to me, this is not a new thing. It was part of those ongoing, we call it threat or whatever, when President Trump said if Nigeria doesn't take care of the Christians, genocide and so on, that he will send boots on the ground. And since that time, negotiations have been going on both on the Capitol Hill and also between the president and the military and so on. But to my knowledge, I think this collaborative relationship is necessary. It has been done in the past. And one thing I would like us to know is that this is the only man that has really cared so much about Nigeria's security. If we remember, in his first term, he was the one who approved the $346 million weapon sale to Nigeria, which President Obama denied, which was a problem between President Obama and President Goodluck Jonathan. President Trump released that and approved it. And in his second term, again, he has ensured that there is this kind of intelligence sharing on the fight of counterterrorism and so on, even though many Nigerians might look at it, he has come again, he wants to grab our oil, he wants to grab this and that. No, that is not what it is. He really cares about Nigeria's security. And also during the time of COVID, he was also the president who really showed more interest. He was speaking with President Buhari at least two good times, more than other world leaders. So he cared so much about Nigeria. Unfortunately, we don't manage our story very well. And that reminds me of the time of Ebola. I said, you will remember that Nigerian doctors and nurses did great work, but because they didn't manage the story the way it was projected, was like America went to Nigeria to take care of Ebola. Many Nigerian physicians lost their lives. I remember a sister here has her elder sister was a medical doctor that died. Nigerian doctors and nurses sacrificed a lot to, curtail Ebola more than any other place, but we didn't manage our story. So we need to commend President Donald Trump for stepping in. And this is not really about only because of Christian or whatever. He really care about religious freedom. You want everybody to worship your God. He's a man of faith. He wants people to practice that freely anywhere. Though the reason it looks like it's only about Christianity is because Christians are the ones being affected, especially in Nigeria. The world knows that. There is no doubt about it. It doesn't matter how we try to hide the story. The fact is still there. Unfortunately, we don't tell the truth. And the media, I'm sorry, I'm not attacking you, but even here, the media, because of liberalism and everybody do whatever you want to do, people failed to report the truth. I always say this, that true journalism is about seeking the truth and believing the truth and reporting the truth, no matter who is being affected, no matter what religion or what politics. True religion, seek the truth, believe the truth, and report the truth. But we don't do that. So we focus on what the other mainstream say or what other people. Sometimes it looks like we even get more fact from raw people on the street that are using their cell phone to send information, their videos, and so on. Even the American journalists or media here, that's what they depend on. They get most of those facts from the raw people on the street. But this is the time we need to manage our own story. And I commend President Trump and also commend President Tinubu being able to work with him. But one of the problems we have also is leadership. And when I say leadership, I'm not only referring to President Tinubu, but sometimes the people that are in place. Last 2 weeks, barely, let me say 11 days ago, a student was kidnapped in a state. I don't want to mention the name because I was involved with talking to the family and so on. And this student being kidnapped, 18-year-old student. Imagine that the police didn't have what it takes even to pursue the case or even trace or find this little kid. But thank God through prayer, I believe prayer works very well in Africa, especially Nigeria. We know how to pray. Through prayer, this kid was released on Sunday. Prayer and negotiation. The father, the mother, they kept crying, the sister, and so on. But what I'm trying to say that even our local law enforcement don't have the equipment. And my problem is we have the money to even buy governors and senators to decamp from one political party to another, but we don't have the money to equip our local police stations. America doesn't need to step in to fight our security. And again, our Nigerian military doesn't need to fight this. This is not the military work. This is a community work. We have every local government have a police department, and we have vigilantes and so on. Why don't we spend money empowering people, equipping them, giving them the necessary resources, and teaching them what to do? When I used to live in Germany, that's what they call a community policing, which is also everywhere here, where you can report. America call it see something, say something. When you see on something funny, you know somebody who is not from your village or from your town, you can monitor the person yourself. You can follow the person before you call other people to come and help you. We don't do that. We don't teach our people. So it's not only the politician or the president, but the people that are being positioned or given an appointment. Unfortunately, our appointments are not by merit. It's by those who played part in our political campaign or tribal people or religious people. If we'll be making sure that people who merit those positions are in power, we will see change.
Your doctor, you've always given us a whole lot to discuss. And so
Thank
I
you.
know that we could go on and just, so as we think about your background in security, you mentioned President Trump has sent boots on the ground, and that was actually talked about before. And so obviously through negotiations that has now happened. What is the expectation that the U.S. troops will do, and kind of what might even be your hopes that the U.S. troops move forward with?
The cooperation is what is needed, the collaboration. And I think that partnership was an intelligence sharing. And it looked like our people, we have highly educated people and powerful military and so on, but everything depends on resources. Yeah, there's one thing in sending someone to university, but not giving him the necessary tools and so on. So training them is okay. Hiring people from Israel, from all over the world, from China, America, to train them. What are the tools they are using to fight? You don't send somebody to work are not equipping them. I run private security business here since 2004. This is my 22-year providing security in the nation's capital. My goal is to send my officers to work and expect them to return home to their wives and their kids. But do we do that in Africa? You empower security police officers, no tools. I used to work for Nigerian immigration at the border. The Niger immigration officers and custom officers are well respected, well taken care of by their government, more than our own government. But these are people who see Nigeria as their own London. They are provided everything to a point that they don't even have the desire for bribery to collect one dime from somebody. But we don't. We have everything. Like I said, we pay millions of dollars for people to move from one political party to another. We pay money to travel here and there, but we are not spending the necessary money for our local police officers, law enforcement, so that they can protect our kids that are in the local and rural areas, our women that are in the market. Who are these things affecting? The kids and the women. Our politicians, not them. Their children are not even in Nigeria. So why don't we start focusing, even the media, start attacking them? Let them invest money in our security. Let them invest money in our healthcare system. These are the two areas our politicians, our leaders don't care about, because they have the ability to fly their own families overseas for school or medical assistance, but the poor ones that can't even buy common medication are the ones suffering right there. We need to attack them to start investing money in these two areas and our roads.
Earlier you mentioned kind of the focus around Christians needing security, Christians being killed. What do you say to individuals that say they're also Muslims? There are also other religions that are also experiencing the type of killing and beatings. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I agree with you that Muslims are being killed, but these are the liberal Muslims, the ones who refuse to allow them to do what they are doing. I used to live in Kano. I lived in Kano on nearly 20 years when I was in immigration. I know how they operate. I know how they function. Not every Muslim is bad, and not every Christian is holy. You understand? But the point is, majority of the people that are being killed are Christians. The Muslims that are being killed are those who are resisting. Like most of my friends when I was in Kano, my boss in immigration, to God be the glory, and may God bless that man and his family. Alhaji Yakubu Dogara, he was the controller of immigration. I was his personal aide. I know what he went through because of having me, a Christian, providing him security and so on. Some of them don't like, not all of them want, someone who's going to stand in their way. And these are the kind of people being attacked. And that's why you see many Muslims are silent. They don't want to talk. They may not like what is going on, but they don't want to talk. Because if they talk, they will be attacked or they will be killed and so on. But majority of the people being killed and ostracized and so on are Christian. Churches being burnt. People going to the church and begin to kill everybody. It doesn't happen in a mosque.
Good, Doctor. We could talk. I know. I can't believe our time is almost closing. But before we go, how long do we expect the boots on the ground? How long do you think the U.S. is actually going to be on the ground in Nigeria?
I don't think they're going to last long. One thing I know this current president is that he's highly intelligent. I don't care what people say about him. Look at when he went to Iran, people say, oh, war, war, war. He went in there, did what he needed to do, he came out. Look at Venezuela. He went in there. As long as we cooperate, it will not last long. That's what I can say. As long as we cooperate in intelligent sharing, because when we need help, we need to show that we need help so that we can be helped. So as long as we show that interest, it will be over.
Good, Doctor. We thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. And we will likely be talking to you again very soon.
Thank you. God bless you.
Let's check in another discussions in diplomatic circles. We'll be right back.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says U.S. military buildup in the region does not frighten him, warning that the people of Iran are a people of war. He was speaking at the First National Congress on Foreign Policy and the History of Foreign Relations in Tehran. Araghchi stressed that Iran would respond according to how it is treated, saying, "We are people of logic. Because we have words, we have reason. And if they choose the path of diplomacy, we will walk that path. If they speak to the people of Iran with respect, we will respond with respect. If they speak with force, We will respond with force. Referring to recent exchanges with the U.S. side, he insisted there was no alternative to negotiation, but said talks could only succeed if Iran's rights were acknowledged.
الان هم آرایش نظامی اونها در منطقه ما را نمی‌ترساند.
We look eye to eye on so many issues, not only...
Denmark's Foreign Minister, Lars Rasmussen, has confirmed the resumption of talks with the United States amid President Donald Trump's ambitions for the autonomous Arctic territory.
In UN and NATO and other settings, that we need to stand up.
Rasmussen was speaking at a press conference on Sunday, flanked by his Greenland counterpart, Vivian Mottfield. He also highlighted growing international attention on Greenland, pointing to new diplomatic missions, including Canada's newly opened consulate in Nuuk, as signs of the territory's increasing geopolitical importance. The renewed diplomatic push follows a reported framework understanding reached between Trump and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, aimed at increasing U.S. influence in Arctic security policy. India and Malaysia are working towards strengthening ties, made possible by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the country on Saturday. He and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim pledged their partnership would benefit the entire humanity.
Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim.
Modi also praised the historical friendship between he and Ibrahim, saying they had both been friends even before being Prime Minister. He highlighted Malaysia's significance for India's diaspora, remarking Malaysia has the second largest Indian origin community in the world. There's so much that connects Indian and Malaysian hearts. The Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim highlighted the strength of bilateral trade, which reached nearly $19 billion in 2025.
Festivals together.
Welcome back. February 13, 50 years ago, Nigeria's then head of state, General Murtala Muhammed, was assassinated in Lagos at the age of 37. His daughter, Dr. Aisha Muhammad Oyebode, established the Murtala Muhammed Foundation in his honor. Nearly 25 years ago, ahead of the 50th anniversary of his assassination, they held a strategic policy workshop commemorating his famous Africa Has Come of Age speech. I'll read you an excerpt. Africa has come of age. It is no longer under the orbit of any extracontinental power. It should no longer take orders from any country, however powerful. The fortunes of Africa are in our hands to make or mar. For too long, we've been kicked around. For too long, we have been treated like adolescents who cannot discern their interests and act accordingly. For too long, it's been presumed that the African needs outside experts to tell him who are his friends and who are his enemies. The address was made at the Organization of African Unity Extraordinary Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It was a firm response to a patronizing letter from then U.S. President Gerald Ford regarding the Angolan Civil War, affirming that Africa would no longer take orders from foreign powers. It marked a bold shift in Nigerian foreign policy towards non-alignment, anti-imperialism, and African independence. At the strategic workshop in Lagos at the NIA, where the late general had once paid a visit to then Director General, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, a panel discussion was held to interpret and give new life to the famous Africa Has Come of Age speech. The late Nigerian military head of state has been described as a unique leader, sometimes a visionary for Nigeria's place on the global scene, and a bold Pan-Africanist.
Murtala Muhammed witnessed Africa.
The Nigerian Institute of International Affairs was honored to be the venue for this year's commemoration of 50 years since the general was assassinated, with a strategic policy workshop.
And one of the architects of Nigeria's modern foreign policy.
Among the activities scheduled on the program was a panel discussion focused on his Africa Rising speech, delivered at the Extraordinary Summit of the Organization of African Unity. Right before the panelists came up, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, who was appointed Director General of the NIIA by the late General, recalled the moments before and during the speech, which depicted Nigeria's position regarding the Angolan Civil War that began in 1975.
The famous Addis Ababa, Africa had come of age. He invited me to, till today, there is still a debate on who wrote that speech. Permanent Secretary, I'm sure you know that Ambassador Oluwadeniji wrote that speech. But people don't believe that it was him. Again, it's another something I carry on my head, because it was so, the speech was so radical that people didn't believe that it could have come from the ministry. They thought it could have is the institute. Who was it? It's not the institute. It was Oluwadeniji, your ambassador. In fact, before that speech was written, the decision had been taken that General Obasanjo would lead the delegation to Addis Ababa. When General Obasanjo got the draft speech, of course, protocol demands that it will be sent to the head of state. It was sent to the head of state, and General Murtala liked it so much. He decided he would lead the delegation and he would deliver the speech, because when it had the imprimatur of the head of state, it will carry more weight with the other heads of state that will be there. And he went, and now you saw the previous general that you used to know in this country, the pre-head of state general, in delivering the speech. It was like, I'm not going to take prisoners. I'm not going to be diplomatic about this. This is where I am leading Nigeria. We're not going to be afraid of anybody. And this, and I thought, this head of state had got to know. But this is the one that I remember seeing at Ahmadu Bello University the day he was going to pray, and we must have irritated him to the point that he stopped, turned around, and said, you know, they're bloody cousins. Why are we wasting our time? Bloody waste of time. And he went. And that was the head of state that I then saw in delivering that speech. I emphasize this because it resonated in the hall. By the end of that conference, we have succeeded in moving the OAU from this middle position into actually the radical position of supporting the MPLA. It didn't please the Americans, but I'm sure they developed an understanding and respect for General Murtala Muhammed after that speech.
The panelists coming shortly after and share their thoughts on how that speech was pivotal for Nigeria's foreign policy.
If we are talking about the essential things that were contained in General Murtala Muhammed's speech, namely sovereignty defense, unity, liberation and freedom, one would say that we are still far off of being where he thought we should have been. In other words, Africa has not come of age in the sense that he meant it.
I think it was Chinua Achebe who said, until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always favor the hunter. So we need to tell our own story. To set the ball rolling for the discussion that we're going to have, we're talking about Africa as come of age, as Africa come of age. I can bet, and this is not because there's anything wrong with it, more than half of the people in this auditorium today have not read that speech before.
One of the objectives of foreign policy is trying to project a positive image in the international system. So you want to project a positive image. Of course, during the time of General Sani Abacha, they said Nigeria became a pariah nation, nobody wants to have anything to do with us. But that time of General Gowon, the time of General Murtala Muhammed, that we're talking about was that time of Nigeria, when Nigeria was all over the place, when Nigeria can actually be a big voice in the international system.
He had people around him who rallied round and ensured that his foreign policy goal was achieved globally. And today, both, both the citizens and the individuals or the leaders in Nigeria are not doing too badly, as we say. Of course, there is some challenges with governance, among others, but Nigeria, I will emphasize, still has that global value. It still has that voice globally because Nigeria has the resources. And Africa, of course, is said to have 30% of the natural resources in the world, and uncultivated arable resources, 60% are said to be in Africa. So to me, Africa has come of age because of what we have. What we need to do is to enable us strategize ways in which we can make what we have productive to us and beneficial to Africans.
Nigeria has been helping most of these countries, including these Southern African countries that became a frontline state because of this radical posture of Nigeria's foreign policy, which Murtala portrayed, and he followed it intentionally. But eventually after the election, Ambassador Ping lost the election. But the next day in South Africa, it was reported that Nigeria lost. Instead of Ping or Gabon lost. So we need to tell our own stories. We need to tell it the way it should be.
The late General Murtala Muhammed spent only 200 days in office as head of state. His speech has been analysed over the years, causing thought leaders to agree if Nigeria had continued on that trajectory, she would have been a greater nation by now.
Keynote. He didn't call it keynote though. That Professor Kiyemi gave just...
And that's the program this week. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.